A comfortable tragedy. Two words that don't seem like they should ever come together, yet when I think about the Apothecary Diaries, it feels so oddly apt. You never really know what's lurking in the shadows in a story like this. From simple jealousy to silently trying to take over the kingdom. From negligence to deliberate ploys of murder. One misstep very well could lead to death. In this treacherous world, however, exists a story that feels so comfortable. A world where tragedy, conspiracy, and consequences all exist, but at a distance that feels safe. This is an effect that the Apothecary Diaries achieves through deliberate writing. The stories and arcs, their setups, their tragedies, and most importantly our main character Maomao all contribute to making this experience comfortable. It's this very comfort that amplifies the impact of the stories it tells. This aspect is one of the many reasons I fell in love with this show. To see how it achieves this though, let's look at the first piece of the puzzle, the way it writes its stories. The reason I feel so comfortable in this show is because of the way it sets up its arcs. There is a very clear degree of separation between the conflict and our characters. It's a relative, or it's a concubine we aren't yet invested in, or it's someone completely different. In episode 2, the conflict is about a squadron of soldiers that accidentally get poisoned. In episode 3, it's about a concubine we haven't yet seen pretending to be unwell to be sold off. In episode 9, it's about an old man who was once in touch with Jinshi but not anymore. You get the point, I'm sure. The mysteries themselves often feature characters we don't have any investment in, which in turn makes it easier for it to get more complex. Like the story of the three brothers. These are characters we've never seen before. The metalsmith is someone we'd never known before. The fact that he's dead, while it's sad, isn't treated as a tragedy on its own. Maomao gets to solve a mystery around his will towards his sons, and we as the audience experience the late metalworker's desire for his sons to get along. The tragedy in this arc still remains the same. It's sad seeing a rift between brothers and seeing their father leave behind a will that hopes they could get along. Yet it doesn't hit excessively hard because it's characters we've only just met. Ultimately, it's a mundane tragedy, one that doesn't involve any of the core members of our cast, the sadness of which is kept one layer away from us. This structure in turn makes even more room for the story to fit in as much tragedy, irony, or general humanity into its stories as it wants. There is space to show a whole range of ugliness, from jealousy to more silent, devious plots that lay hidden in the shadows. Let's look at this example in season 2, the Palace Doors episode. The conflict is perfect in its stakes. It follows an old tradition that a true ruler must be able to pass through the right doors to reach the end. This is something the current emperor is not yet able to do. Yet it doesn't really matter that badly either. They stopped choosing emperors through this method several generations ago. This palace and the doors just serve as a fun little trial for the current emperor to confirm his worth. Now, of course, you can say that the emperor did care to pass this trial to some extent. He wanted to prove that he's the rightful ruler and whatever else, but passing this trial really isn't that big of a deal. I'm sure even if Maomao failed this trial, nothing would have actually happened and the story wouldn't actually change. Maomao understanding the nature of the trial served to provide the audience with the real truth behind it. How the palace was created in deliberation to filter for the right bloodline. How it was a silent scheme in taking control of the empire by the royal family that existed in the past. That is the part of the episode that delivers the real impact, and it comes from a relatively low stakes environment preceding it. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't even really matter that the true purpose of the palace was to filter for the true blood either. It's just a silent, messed up truth of the world they live in. A relic of the past, a reminder of what humans do to each other. The show writes its stories in this way to lure the audience in. There's a certain finesse in telling stories that are so real, showcasing a whole spectrum of the human condition, laying bare the ugliness of our actions, and yet having none of it actually affect the characters we so dearly love. It gets away with this because it builds this expectation right from the start. The very first episode starts with Maomao getting kidnapped and sold off to the rare palace. But it never really dwells on that reality, and quite frankly, neither does Maomao herself. There's a quick gear change to her adapting to her life in the palace and finding the best situation for herself. It's the same when Maomao gets kidnapped in season 2 by Lolan and Suirei. There's a distinct lack of despair and doom. Maomao, even whilst in enemy territory, simply makes the best of her own situation. Which conveniently brings me to the second part of the puzzle of why the Apothecary Diaries shines in making its atmosphere so good. Maomao.
しっかり反省なさい。本にゃん様。ありがとうございます。ここに薬草を干して、ここで跳躍をして、ここはあれで、あれはここで。
Who is Maomao? Let's start with the easiest one first. She's an apothecary. Her extensive knowledge of various poisons and drugs lets her navigate various different situations in the palace. That's kinda the whole show. Every arc has something or the other to do with drugs or poison, and Maomao's expertise helps us decode the surface level mysteries. That's not all of it though. She is an apothecary. No, not in the I am a doctor kind of way, more in the way that being an apothecary is all she ever wants to do in her life. She just wants to collect herbs, study more about medicine, and help people out. That's Maomao living life at her best. That's her core. Both of these facets of Maomao's character matter. Being competent at medicine means I have a silent trust in her to be able to stay out of danger when it comes to poisons and ailments. It's that trust that makes me believe that she will be fine after finding poison in her soup that she just drank, or that she'll be able to cure or diagnose the issues at hand. Maomao herself is perceivably at low risk of ever being in trouble, no matter the situation. Funnily enough, this trust is reflected one of many times when Lolan trusts that Maomao would be fine in the prison full of snakes. Maomao's love for medicines means she isn't really the type of person to want to be in a place of power. She isn't trying to climb her way up the palace to become an empress or anything of the sort. She simply just wants to make medicines all day long and simply chooses outcomes where she can to maximize for that to become possible. I'd like to look at a small part of this in Maomao's understanding of her own position. As she states multiple times throughout the show, she's just a servant.
私はただの女官です。もっともだ。こちらはただの下女で何の権力も持たない。ただの毒味役がこんなこと考えて何になる。私が平民だからです。私は単なる下女ですので。でも私はただの女官。
This line personifies Maomao's character. Let's look at the scene in Season 1, Episode 9. Maomao makes a plea to Jinchi that if she's ever to be executed, she'd like to go out drinking poison. The atmosphere of this scene, the vibes, the music, all shows us that the scene is supposed to be sad. That Maomao is in a helpless position where she doesn't even get to choose how she goes out because she's a commoner, because she's a servant. As much as those other vibes created though, that's not what I think Maomao feels here at all. I think the scene, if anything, reinforces the core of Maomao's character. Maomao wants to keep making medicines. She wants to keep doing what she loves so dearly. From her perspective, it's a simple request. If she was to be executed for her own mistake, she'd like to die doing what she loves the most, drinking poison. There wasn't some melancholic truth of being captured in a system to her plea. There was no sadness about her being a commoner and therefore unhappy that she could get executed for a small mistake. It's just a simple truth to someone like Maomao. That's her position, and she really does genuinely understand that. It's this very understanding that leads her to make choices that subsequently keep her away from as much trouble as possible, so she can continue living her best life. We see this in various instances right from the start. The way Maomao hides that she can read and write, the way she secretly informs Gyokyo and Lihua's attendants of the poison powder. We also see this in the way she gives information. In this scene in episode 15, she only mentions enough for the others in the room to understand that the raw fish was a deliberate assassination attempt instead of directly telling them it was. It literally also happens in the continuation of the very scene I was talking about just before. Maomao realizes that she's overstepped, doesn't like that outcome for herself, and then simply backpedals on her request while not realizing the problem at hand anyway. She realized that Jinchi didn't like her request for some reason or the other, so she simply apologized and hoped to try another day. That's how I see this interaction. The mood, the atmosphere, all being built here was from Jinchi's perspective. It's Jinchi's own perception of Maomao being a sad soul, being kidnapped into the palace and being forced to work there. Maomao herself, if anything, is and always has been just vibing. Which rather conveniently brings me to another facet of Maomao, her personality. She's always vibing. There's never a situation that gets the better of her. She's challenged throughout the arcs, but she always manages to make the best of her situation. The anime literally starts out with her getting kidnapped and sold off to the Rare Palace, and yet she doesn't let that fact bother her and get depressed. She simply finds ways to do what she loves the most wherever she is. Whatever hand is dealt to her, she's able to find the best out of it. I think the biggest example of this is when Maomao gets sent back home in season 1. She really did want to stay in the Rare Palace, yet due to a misunderstanding, she got sent back. Even through that, we see her just thriving. She's living her best life no matter where she is. That's who Maomao is. Maomao's writing is so fascinatingly consistent. She has always been the crazy medicine-obsessed gremlin. She has always been the one to understand her own position and want the least amount of trouble for herself. Most importantly though, she's always been her own resilient and happy self. These aspects of her character all come together to make the Apothecary Diaries an extremely comfortable experience. Her knowledge of medicines gets us to learn about the nature of the incidents that happen around her. Her understanding of people gets us beneath the surface of the incident itself. Just as we're busy reveling in the ugliness of the truth we're presented, Maomao makes a silent note to herself to stop thinking about the situation too deeply. A reminder for the audience to breathe.
やめよ。動機なんてお偉いさんが勝手につければいい。帝のお気に入りの宦官、それだけで済ませるには何か。誰だっていいか。知らぬが仏、そういうものだ。
このところ毎日執務室に座られて。
よし、忘れよう。思い出してもろくなことにならない。わざわざそんなものを使うのは公にできない内容だから。余計なことか。毒味役の知ったことではない。
Okay, so to recap, stories that aren't related to our main cast, arcs where our characters are not in too much danger, Maomao is vibing, she's safe. There is one time in this anime where all of this just doesn't seem true. Where we finally think we're going to get an arc that matters to Maomao, where she gets hurt and nearly dies. I am of course referring to the Lacan arc. Well, to be more specific, it's the arc that starts from when Lacan tries to get Maomao and ends after a lot of trouble with a small assassination attempt on Jinchi in the middle. It's a long arc. A lot happens here, the stakes get raised, the incidents get scaled up, the vibes turn serious for just a little while. Despite all of that being true though, this arc is still a perfect representation of all of my points. Maomao doesn't like Lacan. She avoids him. She doesn't want to see him or hear from him. Despite this, the show doesn't let itself get too serious around their strained relationship. It doesn't ever affect the show. Maomao is still out there being herself, collecting herbs, getting excited over rare goods, and solving mysteries. Even after the big event in this arc where Maomao gets hit in the face and then hurts her leg, when she wakes up, she isn't suddenly motivated to get the culprit out of anger. She saves Jinchi because that's what she would do anyway, and after waking up, she's only ever excited by the part where she gets to learn a new formula for the medicine that brings people back to life. And yes, the part where Jinchi's life was at threat not only in this arc but even later on in an arc in season 2 was serious. I mean, we definitely don't want Jinchi to die. It was treated seriously both times, but there was still no dwelling on the fact that he was being targeted. The serious parts of the investigation were all skimmed over. The atmosphere of the show didn't really change in either of the times it happened. The final part of this arc with Lacan and, excuse my Chinese here, Fengshen, was ultimately also not really about Maomao at all. It was a beautiful and tragic story of the helplessness of one military officer and the helplessness of a courtesan, which, because of Maomao and Lacan, ended up being a somewhat happy ending for everyone involved. This arc had all the drama. An assassination plot, a story close to Maomao, times where it got uncomfortable, times where it got dangerous. Yet, at the end of the day, when the arc was over, whilst the big threat of Suire and the conspiracy still remained, the show simply agreed to return to normalcy. where Maomao is just an apothecary in the rare palace living her best life. This arc, if anything, proves that the Apothecary Diaries definitely knows what it wants to be. Light-hearted fun with a sprinkle of the right amount of drama, tragedy, and humanity. Before I wrap this one up, let me just say that the purpose of this video wasn't to provide a retrospective analysis of the Apothecary Diaries. I didn't even touch on the fact of how the rare palace is a birdcage that traps all these concubines inside, or how this anime, despite keeping its serious moments light, also has comedic moments on top of that to enhance the vibes of the show. I haven't even touched on the various imagery that's present in the show. You guys want to see something crazy? Look at this random scene in episode 18. This is a scene where it's showing Fengshen contracting syphilis. The red marks on her body appear and they look just like the leaves outside her window, which is like saying the red on her body is stopping her from going outside to the red that is outside. It's such a beautiful moment, and this is just one of the many visual moments in this anime that are so stunning. This anime is the type to deliver on several of its best aspects. It really is that beautiful. The part I covered today is just one of many aspects the show completely nails, and it just so happens that that was the one I was most interested in discussing. I hope this story continues to be the beautiful experience it has been so far, so I can keep enjoying how it creates this atmosphere amongst the other brilliant things in the show. That's all from me today though. I hope you guys liked this video. Thank you all for watching.